Welcome to our first discussion of servant leadership. I'm very excited to present this concept to you and to really work with you throughout the rest of this class. Servant leadership is a tremendously important model of leadership and a powerful one, and we're going to be exploring it. But I want to begin by sharing with you a little bit of my own history with the concept of servant leadership and how I came to study it. So, servant leadership is something that I was familiar with in my early studies of leadership, but it really came to a head for me when I was enrolled in the doctoral program at Gonzaga University. See, Gonzaga University's doctoral program in leadership studies espouses the servant leadership philosophy and really teaches the servant leadership philosophy. But it's not just something that they teach, they actually practice it in the way that they carry out the doctoral program. And I really felt like my faculty were there striving to help me to be successful and accomplish great things. And the program has put out award-winning dissertations, but also serves its individuals to a graduation rate that exceeds many other universities and PhD programs because of this approach to servant leadership. So let's really think about what it means to be a servant leader then. For many, the concept of servant leadership is something that they struggle with. And they struggle with it because oftentimes of the word servant. Servant has so many negative historical connotations to things like slavery and other things that it really has a very negative connotation. But if we're honest, the concept of leadership has its own mixed elements. Yes, it's true that we really value leadership and we think of leadership as a positive thing, but at the same time, we don't experience a lot of great leadership. In fact, there was a recent survey done in which they asked individuals if they would rather have a raise or a change of leadership in their organization. And over 80% of people in the survey said they would prefer to have a change in leadership over a raise. That tells you a lot about how we actually experience leadership in our society. And so both servant and leader have some negative connotation to them. And Greenleaf, who was the author of the concept of servant leadership in the modern era, understood this. And in fact, he spoke about this idea that both ideas have a kind of a dark history and a challenging history. But there are elements of both ideas that can be redeemed, that can be brought into play to make a better society. So let me explain what he thought here. First of all, we need the heart of the servant, the individual whose desire is to serve and bless the lives of others, someone who really has a core motive that wants to make a difference in others' lives and in the world around them. And he believed that that heart, that desire to serve was critical. And so when you hear the concept servant, that's what we're referring to. But at the same time, he believed that that heart alone isn't enough. That individuals with a desire to make a difference need the skills to lead and to lead effectively. And that when those two things are held in balance, when they are held in paradox, the desire to serve and the will to lead, the will to make a difference, the will to accomplish things, are held in balance by each other, we achieve something greater, which is servant leadership. The paradoxical blending of the desire to serve and the will and the skill to lead. And that is what is critical about servant leadership. Now, Greenleaf believed that if we could create individuals, both servant leaders and followers, that could transform society. That as more and more people take on this approach to caring and serving others with the skills of effective leadership, that society could be transformed. But to do that, we needed to not only transform the individuals, but the places that help those individuals to develop. Most people spend most of their lives in large organizations, businesses and other organizations, where they practice leadership and followership. And so within those contexts, if we can create contexts that nurture and develop individuals as servant leaders and followers, then that could transform individuals and society. But where do the businesses and organizations get their ideas from? Well, behind the businesses and organizations are universities and churches, places where individuals learn about how to contribute of the world, and then put that in place as they go out into the world of work. And what's behind those? Well, the foundations, the donors, and the seminaries that train the leaders of churches. And so Greenleaf believed that if we wanted to transform society, we needed to work across all of these sectors to bring about change that would then impact individuals, organizations, universities and churches, seminaries and foundations, and create an integrated society that's more dedicated to serving. I love this quote. I believe that caring for persons, the more able and the less able, serving each other is what makes a good society. If a better society is to be built, one more just and more loving and providing opportunity for people to grow, the most open way is to raise the performance as servant of as many institutions as possible by voluntary regenerative actions initiated within them by committed individuals. So what you see here is if we want this society to be created, we need that blending of the heart of the servant, the hands of the leader, and we need to have an impact across society. So then what is this servant leadership that we're talking about? Servant leadership is a form of leadership that is inside out. It begins with the motive of the leader. As Greenleaf said, servant leadership begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. So we start with the desire to serve. And out of that desire to serve, we choose to lead so that we can make a difference. It is about identity, not just skill. Leadership then overarches expertise. We want to become effective leaders, but we want to do it from a place of a strong sense of identity. And we'll come back to that later. Because what happens is, as we develop the heart of the servant, that desire to serve, that deep desire to pursue our leadership from a basis of humility, empathy, compassion, and commitment to ethical behavior, it changes the way we lead. Motive matters. And what you see here is the work of Larry Spears. Larry Spears reviewed all of the writings of Robert Greenleaf and identified 10 dominant themes. Now, these weren't the only themes, but they were 10 really critical dominant themes in his writings. Listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people, building community. These are concepts that we don't often hear in association with traditional ways of thinking about leadership because they are informed and transformed by the change of the motive. The heart of the servant leader gives birth to a different way of being, thinking, and practicing leadership. And we'll look at that more deeply, and you'll learn what all of these concepts mean as we proceed through the course. Now, in addition to the philosophical models that have been developed by Greenleaf, Spears, and others, there are also academic models. And I just want to introduce you quickly to one of those. This is the model of Van Dierendonck. Van Dierendonck is a researcher who strived to develop a model of servant leadership that could be validated through research and then measured through research. So he's developed an assessment for assessing and measuring servant leadership and the practice of it. And what he found was that servant leaders take an approach to leadership that involves empowering and developing people. Of course, if your motive is to help others to grow and develop and become successful, you've got to empower and develop them. But we do that from a basis of humility, a humble approach to leadership. That doesn't mean weak, it means humble, right? Authenticity. The leader is authentic in their way of being and their way of approaching their leadership. They accept others for who they are as individuals, but challenge them to be better and empower and develop them to be better. By providing direction, here's where we need to go, this is what we need to achieve, and stewardship, engaging in stewardship, which means a strong sense of ownership for the accomplishment and success of the organizations that one is a part of. And so that commitment, that engagement, that concern for, that stewardship for the organization and its goals becomes a critical element. Because servant leadership is not a weak form of leadership. When we talk about servant leadership, yes, we are focused on the legitimate wants and needs of followers, but we are also focused on efficient and effective processes and outcomes. Leadership that only is concerned with the needs of followers is not servant leadership. Leadership that is only concerned with accomplishing goals is not servant leadership. Servant leadership is only found in the context where we have high concern for the needs of people and high concern for organizational outcomes and success. That is servant leadership. So I hope you found this introduction to the concept valuable. We're going to be exploring it more deeply as we go through the course. So look forward to doing that with you.